Hey everybody, Brandon here. Just living in Western Michigan, walking the dog, wearing sweaters, reading books. I just finished reading The Moonstone by Wilkie Collins. It's considered the first English detective novel. I'd heard about it before, but I heard an episode last summer of the Shedunnit podcast. It's one of my favorite podcasts. It's created and produced by Caroline Crampton. Listen to it, it's fantastic. Really smart. Anyway, The Moonstone, Wilkie Collins. A great name. Not The Moonstone, Wilkie. And The Moonstone is about the Moonstone, which is a big-ass diamond. And it's stolen from a Hindu temple in India, beginning of the book, by a British army officer, and brought back to England. This officer bequeaths it to his niece, and she wears it to her birthday dinner in like a brooch. Puts it away that night in her bedroom, wakes up and it's gone. Stolen. And thus begins the mystery of the Moonstone. So local cops are called in, of course, and they bumble about, get nowhere, actually probably make things worse. And so the family called Scotland Yard. That one does. The Yard sends its best man, Sergeant Cuff, a brilliant detective who eventually, of course, solved the case. He's a fantastic character. He's brilliant with the deductions and the sort of superhuman perception. He's prickly and weird and a bit of a misanthrope. You know, all these sort of tropes that you still find in detective fiction, like right up to today. You know, not only in the you find a lot in Americans. I mean, I think about Matthew McConaughey and True Detective and that kind of shit. So, anyway, here's where we meet Sergeant Cuff, as described by the butler, Betteredge, who's one of many narrators in the book and by far the best and the funniest.
When the time came for the sergeant's arrival, I went down to the gate to look out for him. A fly from the railway drove up as I reached the lodge, and out got a grizzled, elderly man, so miserably lean that he looked as if he had not got an ounce of flesh on his bones in any part of him. He was dressed all in decent black, with a white cravat around his neck. His face was as sharp as a hatchet, and the skin of it was as yellow and dry and withered as an autumn leaf. His eyes, of a steely light gray, had a very disconcerting trick, when they encountered your eyes, of looking as if they expected something more from you than you were aware of yourself. His walk was soft, his voice was melancholy, his long, lanky fingers were hooked like claws. He might have been a parson or an undertaker, or anything else you like, except what he really was. A more complete opposite to Superintendent Seagrave than Sergeant Cuff, and a less comforting officer to look at for a family in distress, I defy you to discover, search where you may. "Is this Lady Verander's?" he asked. "Yes, sir." "I am Sergeant Cuff. This way, sir, if you please."
All right, so there's Sergeant Cuff, and again, he is clearly the strongest tie to modern detective fiction. And one of the fun things about reading this is that you see all these like prototypes. There's the mystery itself, which is a crime committed in an English country house, you know, a manor house, filled with guests and family and staff, all of whom are suspects in the crime. And then there's the solution, which only the detective could have come up with, and completely astonishes everyone else. Oh, got after some deer. Oh boy. Okay, we're stopping so Gumbo can look at the deer, and I can catch my breath. So in a lot of ways, though, what's interesting about the Moonstone is the ways it was different from the classic golden age, Agatha Christie type mystery. For instance, here, can you see the deer right behind me? What was I talking about? So, for instance, while the crime takes place in an English manor house, and yeah, all the guests at the house and the staff are suspects, it doesn't really focus on them. Many actually aren't treated as suspects at all. They're sort of just come and go from the book. And so that's something that clearly evolved later. Someone else had the brilliant idea to keep everything confined to the house and the people in it. Also, Sergeant Cuff is only in like a third of the book. So that was sort of unusual. And there are multiple narrators, which is, you wouldn't find a typical mystery, and just an absolutely sprawling plot with lots of subplots and twists and turns. There are a lot of red herrings, which, another classic mystery trope, but the plot is not your tightly constructed story, narrowly confined to the country house where the crime occurs. I mean, that's the classic setup, right? Everyone comes together in the house, the manor house, whatever. Someone's murdered, and the detective talks to everybody in the house one by one, gets their alibis. We try to figure out who did it, and then we can't, but the detective can, and everyone goes home happy. The last thing I'll say is that in the classic Whodunit, the it is a murder, and in this book, it's a robbery. So that was somewhat surprising. Now, I learned from the Shedunnit podcast that the Moonstone, the actual crime that it's based on or that inspired it, was a murder, but it was a 5-year-old boy. So presumably Collins, Wilkie, we could call him Wilkie, didn't want to, capitalize on the death of a young boy, but a 5-year-old boy, I think, by writing which is essentially just an entertaining book. But so this is a damn entertaining book. I had a lot of fun with it. The book is long, and it does feel a little bloated in places, but he keeps it moving and he keeps you interested, and he brings it all together really elegantly, brilliantly in the end. This almost reads like a Dickens, more like a Dickens than an Agatha Christie. And in my research for this review, which consisted of reading the foreword to the book, I learned that Charles Dickens and Wilkie Collins were buddies. And in fact, the Moonstone was first published in serial form in a magazine run by Charles Dickens. So the book definitely has a serial type feel, like a Dickens novel, where each section is basically like a little novella in itself with its own little subplots. So in that way, it feels kind of bloated, like a Dickens novel can. And if you can live with that, again, if you're a Dickens fan, grab this one. You get a kick out of it. And if you're just a mystery fan, you should probably grab it too. So that's the Moonstone. Pick it up if you do. Let me know, and I'll be back soon with my thoughts on The Secret History by Donna Tartt. Cheers.